Hi everyone, my name is Niles, and I am the owner of euphoricomedy.com, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I realize this isn't technically my first video. It was supposed to be, but circumstances, life, all that. Basically, my computer died, and I had already had another interview lined up that I didn't want to cancel, so that ended up being my first interview, and I put it together on my laptop. And that's the first episode of Fruity Finds that I did with Sweet Tea. So if you haven't had a chance to check out that video yet, be sure to. She is in the Miami area, and she makes some really incredible desserts. At the time of the interview, she was only making sweet potato pie and banana pudding, but now she has cheesecake versions of each, which are just incredible. So definitely check her out in the video, previous video. And I will also be sure to link in the description below her new website where you can order online as well. Besides that, let's get started. So for my first video, I thought to do kind of like a hybrid sort of thing. This isn't exactly going to be a Let's Play channel, but at the end of the day I like playing video games, and so I thought this might be a good way of incorporating that into what I want the main purpose of this channel to be, which is specifically to talk about issues and things like what we're going to go over today, which is basically how to cultivate empathy, or as I like to refer to them as the 5 keys to empathy that I found particularly useful. So if you haven't had a chance to check out that blog, there will also be a link to that below too for you to read it properly. But so that's what I thought I would be doing, kind of a way of killing 2 birds with 1 stone, which is sort of a horrible saying, but anyway. So the game that I wanted to feature today, though, is the latest Star Wars game. Well, I don't think it's the latest one. I think there's another one that came out after it, but I think that's what Rogue Squadron came out after it. Probably. Can't remember. But anyway, this is Fallen Order. If you haven't had a chance to play this game yet, definitely check it out. It is awesome. Not perfect, but it's a nice blend of elements from Dark Souls to Legend of Zelda to Metroid, and like a little bit of Uncharted in there too, I guess. So in that respect, it has a little bit for everybody. There's some issues I take with it, but besides that, it was definitely a great game, and today I will be showing you basically the introduction of it. And since I've already played it, and since I'm planning on talking about other stuff, I am not going to be playing this on its hardest difficulty or anything like that, so yeah, Anyway, let's start the game. So to start, it's important for us to define what empathy is, because a lot of people, and this is, it's perfectly understandable, but a lot of the times people tend to confuse empathy with sympathy, and they do have similarities, but they are not synonymous with each other. Sympathy is more kind of a skin-deep sort of emotion, where you feel bad if somebody's going through something difficult. That's about it. That's the extent of it. They're struggling through something. It's oh, that sucks. That's tough. But it doesn't really get much further than that. Empathy is different, because when you're feeling empathetic towards somebody, you're able to put yourself in their situation and to kind of relate to their pain in that sense. So it's a deeper sort of connection that you develop. And Walt Whitman actually has a pretty good way of describing it. He says, "I do not ask a wounded person how he feels. I myself become the wounded person. My hurt turns livid upon me as I lean on a cane and observe." So just like he says in his quote, when you're feeling empathetic towards someone, you feel what they're feeling in that moment or whenever. That's how you're able to understand them on a deeper level. So how do we develop that? There's a few ways, and the first of those ways that I found especially useful is by becoming curious. And when I say become curious, I don't mean being nosy. It's a very, very different thing. It's annoying, and nosy people frankly drive me crazy. Because when you're nosy, you're not really paying attention to help somebody. You're just paying attention because, I don't know, maybe you're hoping to hear something juicy or whatever. But enough about being nosy. We're talking about being curious. When you're curious, it's your ability to pick up on potentially subtle cues that might indicate how a person might be feeling in that moment. So it's important for us to learn to be curious with our friends and family, because that's when we can tell something's wrong without them having to tell us. Maybe you have a friend who's usually very happy and energetic and engaging, and then, one day all of a sudden they're just, maybe they're a little bit more soft-spoken. Maybe they don't feel like hanging out or talking to you, and their energy levels just seem kind of low. That's the kind of thing you notice when you're actively trying to be curious, to pay attention to whether or not they're doing well. So, when you practice that sort of curiosity, you're in a better position to help somebody who might be in need. Because first of all, you're going to be able to notice if they're in need. It's not like somebody goes up to you and it's like that same person maybe who's usually very energetic. Maybe all of a sudden they have no energy, and instead they're like, oh, okay, well, you're just having a bad day, whatever. I'll talk to you later. No, it's you take a moment to think about it, and it's like, that's not how they usually act, and then you can move on to asking them, hey, what's up, what's going on? The second key is learning to ignore your prejudices and learning how to find common ground with somebody. In this case, we're talking about even your friends and family, because at the end of the day, we all have prejudices that we need to work on. No matter what anybody says, I have my prejudices that I still need to work on too. It's like that song from Avenue Q, musical that I'm referencing. Anyway,
sounds like scrap.
There's a song that basically says everybody's a little bit racist, and it's true. It just is. There's nobody who doesn't have some sort of prejudice against somebody else, or a group of people that they don't need to work on. We all do. And so one of the first steps that you have to make when you're trying to become more empathetic is acknowledging that you have certain prejudices. You need to be able to learn how to identify them. And I have written about that too, I believe. So, be sure to check that out too. Oh, God, I did it again. So once you're able to determine what your prejudices are, then you can basically learn to ignore them. And that's literally the whole point of trying to figure out what your prejudices are, so you can ignore them again. But now you're actively ignoring them and then viewing whatever situation you're in from a more objective, understanding perspective, basically. And once you do that, then you can look for common ground. And so one of the examples that I believe I've used is basically like, maybe your friend lost a loved one or something like that, and maybe they're the way how they deal with that loss might be different from what you're used to, whether it be due religious ideology, family traditions, whatever it is. Maybe they want to bury them, but you're used to cremation, whatever. The point is, don't focus on how they are managing that, in the respect of how they're going to deal with this family member who just died. Focus on the fact that they're trying to cope with this loss in the first place. How would you feel if you were in their situation and you lost somebody that you cared for dearly as well? And that's, that puts you in a better position to be more empathetic and more understanding to what they might be going through. The third key is you have to learn to listen closely, and that's different from hearing. You know, much in the way that sympathy and empathy gets combined together, and people think it's the same thing. The reality is, um, hearing is a passive action. It's like, you know, hearing cars passing by, or hearing your neighbor's music at 3 a.m. in the morning for some crazy reason. Things like that. That's passive. Well, okay, the latter one is pretty active because it got very aggravating. But my point is, when it comes to listening, you're analyzing what you're hearing. You're thinking about how you're going to react to it. You know, it's an active process. And so, when you learn to listen properly to people, you're able to read between the lines. Like, say, for example, you have a friend who just went through a really bad breakup. Maybe the person cheated on them, or maybe they're just, you know, neglectful. Whatever it is, that friend of yours is likely to be ranting and raving and even event and carrying on about all sorts of things, and maybe even like tossing around ideas about, I should get back at her. I should just go out and get completely wasted with my buddies, and I need to get back at him, and maybe I need to sleep around with the next dude I see on the street, whatever the nonsense is, which obviously don't encourage that. That's not going to help them heal. All that's going to do is give them a ton more regrets, and you're not going to be a good friend for that. What a good friend would do instead is listen beyond what they're saying, recognize the whole reason why they're saying it, and in this case it would be because maybe they don't feel like they were valued in the previous relationship. Maybe they feel unwanted or unworthy of feeling cared for or loved or whatever it is. 9 times out of 10 in those kind of instances, that is how they feel. So when you recognize that, then you're able to better address the issue and give them proper advice on how to deal with what they might be going through. Instead of telling them go sleep around with a bunch of dudes, maybe set up a day for you guys to just like hang out together, watch your favorite movies together or whatever. But that's how listening closely comes in handy when you want to be empathetic over what somebody's going through or something like that. That's how you learn to relate. And kind of in that same, I guess in that same sort of vein, the fourth key deals with learning how to demonstrate consideration. Much like when you're listening, you're taking the time to understand and everything. Consideration takes that another step further. It's not just about listening anymore, and it's more about just in general, you want to take a moment to think before you react. You don't want to have these sort of knee-jerk reactions that might cause you to give your friends some bad advice, or maybe cause you to misinterpret a situation where you think you might be able to offer help, and really you're telling them the worst thing you could possibly be telling them, or the exact opposite of what they want to hear.
I've been working with you some time now.
So
I've never seen you do anything.
when you're trying to be considerate of somebody, think about like say at work, you have a coworker who doesn't usually make a fuss about anything, or maybe it's even your supervisor. You have a good rapport with them or whatever, but then one day they come in, they're really upset, and they just start nagging at you about some minor little issue that you might have from the day before. And obviously that's not like them, but in that moment maybe they're telling you off right in front of your coworkers and stuff, and you're inclined to speak back because you're like, hey, what's your problem? Instead of doing that, it's more important to patiently assess the situation, and I understand that's difficult to do. I'm going the wrong way. That'd be difficult for anybody to do. That's difficult for me to do. We need to realize that in situations like that, it's not usually because of whatever they're complaining and carrying on about. And so the best time to approach that is frankly later on. take the time to let them cool off, let yourself cool off, because I'm sure you're gonna be pissed off with somebody talking to you like that. And then just approach them privately.
Yeah,
Say, you know,
something's going on.
I think we need to talk about what happened. That
Everybody up. Identification ready.
you're not being yourself. And again, that goes back to being curious too. So in this case, it's not just about friends and families, but your coworkers, supervisors, whoever else, your subordinates, whatever role you're in. The important thing, though, is to take that moment to realize that something is up. That this isn't right. Final key is kind of in line with the second key about ignoring prejudices and finding common ground. But instead of this being
Yes, seconds.
an internal thing, you're looking externally now. And that means re-examining who you perceive to be your enemies. A lot of the times, you know, based on things that we hear or see, we're inclined to believe, oh, you know, this person is my enemy, or somebody I need to avoid, or somebody who's no good for whatever reason. But maybe we don't necessarily take the time to evaluate why they might be like that on their own, or maybe we're projecting some sort of issues that we're having. So this all ties into that, and actually a really good example of it is the story of C.P. Ellis and Anne Atwater. And so if you haven't heard of those two names before, I strongly encourage you to look them up. But I'll summarize a bit of what happened there, although really the whole story is worth a deep reading and consideration, because it is a beautiful example of what it means to learn to empathize and you know, to look past the sort of barriers that we put up for ourselves. And so in the case of C.P. Ellis, he was a member of the Ku Klux Klan, and Anne Atwater was an African-American activist during the time of the Civil Rights Movement. So already you can see that they're very clearly on two opposite sides here.
Yes.
Or so you would think initially. And that's the issue that happened with C.P. Ellis. As he says himself, hating on America is hard to do because you can't see it to hate it. And so that was the situation that he found himself in without realizing it, mind you, because this was a subconscious thing. He hated his situation. He hated his circumstances. He was you know, the head of a poor working class family and struggling to get by. And
Easy now.
he needed an outlet for that hatred, and since he didn't really, you know, it's hard to consider that, you know, it's this intangible thing that's causing the issues. When you have something tangible there, you know, it's easy to direct that anger towards whatever it is. And in this case, you know, being part of the Ku Klux Klan, obviously it's black people. I don't care what they try to say now, but you know, they're no different than they were before back then. But you know, C.P. Ellis became different, and the way how that happened was pretty interesting, because he was basically forced to work with who he perceived to be was his enemy. In whatever city that he was in, I can't remember where he lived, but basically he was forced to head up or co-chair a special committee that was designed to basically tackle the issues in his community. And he had to co-chair it along with none other than Anne Atwater. And as he says in his own words, when they first started out working together, he hated her with a purple passion. Just such an interesting way of putting that. I mean, I don't know, maybe it was common back then, but I had never heard it before until that. So anyway, you know, of course, when they first started off working together, they couldn't stand each other. So as a result of that, they didn't get much progress done, and they were basically told, until you do make progress, you guys are going to be stuck together. And that's when they really started, I guess, talking about things and just kind of getting everything out in the open. Come on. Is that all I had to do? Okay. I can't remember this tutorial. There we go. Anyway. So, once they really started speaking to each other and everything, they realized that they had a lot in common. And that the issues that they were dealing with was not necessarily either one of their faults. It was really just the result of the circumstances that they were in. But they weren't, causing each other to suffer in the same way that they had initially believed. And so, once C.P. Ellis realized that, he actually renounced his ways, and he's now a former member of the KKK. But I think that what's especially beautiful about their story is the fact that didn't just cause him to change his ways, but a very meaningful friendship was born out of it. I mean, they stayed friends decades later. I'm pretty sure they're still alive, but I can't remember right now. So that's why it's important for us to re-examine on occasion the people who we think we dislike and really contemplate why. Why do I dislike so-and-so? Did they do something to me, or is it just because maybe something that happened that sort of put them into my thinking about any certain situation? And a lot of times we'll come to realize that, that the person isn't going to be at fault for those circumstances, and it's just been a misunderstanding all along. I mean, I'm not saying 100% of the time it's going to be a misunderstanding all along. Let's face it, there are some pretty terrible people out there. But in a lot of scenarios, that's going to be the case. So, just consider that the next time. Maybe you're in at work and you're like, oh, this guy again, I can't stand this dude. And you ask yourself, like, why is it I can't stand it? Is it just because they can't do their work, or is it because I don't like something else going on here? Maybe there's a policy at your company that's just forcing them to be the bad guy, which is something I definitely understand. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. So yeah, those are the 5 keys to empathy. And this has been Star Wars Fallen Order. So be sure to like and leave a comment if you like either of these things, or if you know what, if you don't, leave a comment anyway. I'm here to learn just as much as I'm hoping my information helps somebody else out there too. So I'm fine with that. Whatever, it's the internet. I'm not expecting everybody to love everything I do, or even most of it, or even some of it. Shoot, I like it. I'm having fun doing this. Whatever. Anyway, it's been fun. If you'd like to see more of this, or if you want me to cover another topic that might be of interest to you, definitely be sure to let me know. So like I said, I don't want this just to be a rehash of what I have on the website. I kind of want it to be its own thing as well. But yeah, if you want to learn more, definitely check out my website and see some of the other subjects we've covered. And also stay tuned, because there's some pretty cool new things I have planned as well in the coming weeks, months, whenever. Some new features and everything that I'm going to be rolling out now that I actually have a computer that works. All sorts of good stuff. But yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. I'm going to keep playing. You don't have to keep watching, but I'm going to keep playing. I guess this game's really fun.